This is a true story from my life. I'm 23, and I'm telling it exactly as it happened because I still have every screenshot, receipt, and voicemail stacked in a folder I named Good Light. At the HEB on South Congress, a register beeped and then flashed declined while I held a bouquet of clearance roses like an apology I hadn't needed to make. The cashier tried the card again. It beeped twice. My iPhone buzzed on the conveyor with a bank alert. Your card has been canceled by the primary account holder. And I watched my husband's name pop up above it like a punchline to the wrong joke. Graham had canceled my card at 5:17 p.m. while I was buying dinner and paper towels. By 5:18, I was practicing a stranger's tight smile and saying, "Oh, it's okay. I'll just leave these," to a girl wearing a Texas Forever pin, as if humiliation were a loyalty program. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. Outside, the Austin air was heavy and smelled like hot breaks and tacos. Mopac thrummed. A busker's amp hiccuped through landslide. I tried Graham. He picked up on speaker, voice too cheerful. "Budget reset," he said, like he'd decided to drink more water. "We need to rein in the extras." "Extras like food?" I asked, staring at a cart I couldn't pay for. "Like everything," he said. "We'll talk when I'm home." He came home at 7 with the bergamot candle already lit, like we were hosting guests, laptop open to a spreadsheet that could pass for a hostage note. He was 28, founder of Trainhawk, a performance app he ran out of a co-working space off 2nd Street. He said runway and burn and optics, and wore a Rolex Submariner because, his joke went, a founder has to look like he understands time. The Rolex had my name on the financing paperwork from Tyson's at the Domain because my credit was cleaner. We'd called it motivation and hours. He wore it like an argument that had already won. "I canceled the card because we're bleeding," he told me, eyes bright behind those blue light glasses he used when he wanted to be taken seriously. "Investors want to see discipline. Optics matter." "You chose to humiliate me in a checkout line for optics?" I asked. My voice stayed small, but steady. I set my keys beside the ceramic bowl where he kept the watch at night. The empty cushion stared back when the Rolex wasn't on it. Tonight, the watch sat there, black bezel winking under Edison bulbs. He sighed the sigh of reasonable men in podcasts. "You're being dramatic, Em." I was not dramatic. I was a UT senior finishing late because I'd taken a break to marry him. We'd met at a birthday at Kitty Cohen's. He'd leaned in under a string of patio lights and said he loved that I believed in people, that it made him want to be a better one. When we signed the apartment lease near Riverside, he called us a team. When he needed a card with a better rate for the watch, he called it an investment in us. When he canceled groceries, he called it leadership. In our bedroom, I stared at our Travis County courthouse photo. Me in a white sundress, him in navy, with a grin big enough to borrow money against. On my phone, the joint account feed scrolled through a travelogue I hadn't taken. The line Austin, P6 rooftop. Thompson Austin, room service. Miraval Austin Resort and Spa, 2-day package. East Austin florist called Heat Lightning, hand-tied bouquet. Some charges hit the company card, some the joint. Itemized folios did what they do best, whispering specifics, deluxe king, champagne, late checkout. I called Nina. She was my first friend at UT, the person who once sprinted across Speedway to hand me a spare umbrella like we were in a rom-com. She'd taken the LSAT twice because she liked beating her own high score. "I'm coming over," she said. "Do nothing until I get there." Doing nothing isn't my gift. While I waited, I opened the Trainhawk Employee Handbook PDF I'd once proofread for him. Section 6, Fraternization and Power Dynamics. No romantic relationships between managers and direct reports. Any inter-employee relationship must be disclosed to HR. I highlighted, I screenshotted, I tucked it into a brand new iCloud folder labeled Good Light. Nina swept in carrying a tote bag that always sounded like a toolbox. She wrapped me up, then said, "Food first, brain later." She gave me a granola bar and opened her laptop. "Now, document." We moved like clerks in a tiny courtroom. Photos of the canceled card notification, screenshots of the joint account hotel folios, the time-stamped florist charge. We pulled my own Find My Location history, because we'd shared locations since before we married, and watched his linger downtown on nights he'd said Round Rock recruiting trips. We grabbed publicly visible Instagram stories. A girl's boomerang clink on a rooftop with the skyline, a black dial flashing at the edge of the frame. Magnified, the Cyclops lens at 3 o'clock gave it away. The watch was unmistakable. Heat Lightning is the most mistress-coded bouquet name I've ever heard, Nina said, and I laughed in the kind of jagged way relief comes in emergencies. The next morning, Graham announced he was heading to the UT gym to run drills with the guys and left the watch bowl empty. I kissed his cheek. "Favorite human," he murmured, his code for compliance. After he left, I opened his office drawer, not to snoop, but to verify. Under a stack of branded Trainhawk hoodies, a Fairmont Austin valet ticket winked like a dare. Wednesday, 11:06 p.m. The back had a phone number in loopy handwriting. I typed it into my phone. It populated a contact from Instagram, a Savannah.R UT26, marketing intern, iced oat latte enthusiast. Her profile was clean, curated, careful. She followed Trainhawk. Trainhawk followed her. I sat on the office floor and let truth settle like a weight I could finally clock. The policy he'd insisted on to look legit for investors would be the same policy that held him to his own words. He'd written it. He'd initialed it. He'd printed it on glossy paper and put it in onboarding packets I'd helped collate. That afternoon, while Graham grabbed coffee with an advisor, I took pictures of the empty watch cushion and the serial card tucked in the Rolex box in our safe. The receipt from Tyson's had my name and my signature on the financing plan. I called Tyson's. The woman, Renata, was kind and precise. "Because the watch is financed in your name, you can consign or sell it to a reputable dealer who will satisfy the lien," she said. "We don't buy back, but Crown & Caliber is reputable. Make sure they pay the lender directly." I thanked her, took a breath that felt like it had depth, and sent an appraisal form. Then I wrote an email to compliance@trainhawk.com that Nina helped me structure like a brief. It included dates, times, screenshots, and the policy section number. It used no adjectives. It asked for an investigation. I hit send at 9:02 a.m. By 9:17, an HR generalist named Lena replied, "Thank you. We take this seriously. I'm escalating to the board's audit committee." When Graham called at 12:31, I let it go to voicemail. His text came seconds later. "Where are you? We need to talk." At 5:10, he was waiting in our living room, elbows on knees, watch winking. "What did you do?" he asked, voice low like a parent trying not to yell at a museum. "What did you do?" I asked back. He went hot, fast, loud, charismatic, even in anger. "You've harmed the company," he said. "This is jealousy. Savannah's pretty, and you're insecure." It was like living in a hall of mirrors where every reflection says you're overreacting. I held on to the only solid thing. "You canceled my card while I was buying groceries," I said. "You used our joint account for hotels with itemized champagne. I'm not insecure. I'm informed." He stepped closer. I didn't step back. "If you go further with this," he said, "I will make your life very small." "My life is already the size of a card you shut off," I said. He looked at my hand like he wanted to call it a fist. It was just a hand. 2 days later, Lena asked to meet at a coffee shop near the law school. She wore a black blazer over a t-shirt, hair up, eyes tired in the way of people who prefer doing the right thing to saying it. "We opened an investigation," she said. "We interviewed Savannah. She confirmed an undisclosed relationship. We interviewed Mr. Hale. He denied, then reframed, then suggested you're emotional." She pushed a slim folder toward me. You can read this here. Inside, the policy page, my email, interview summaries, the audit committee's calendar invite for a special session. We don't time things around galas, Lena said when I glanced at the date. We time them around fairness. The Blanton Museum Gala was in 3 days. Graham was scheduled to receive a Rising Founder Award and give a 2-minute speech. He'd been practicing in the mirror with toothpaste foam still on his lip, grinning into our bathroom like a man who loved applause more than oxygen. I finished my coffee, pressed my palm flat against the folder, and said, "Fairness is fine. I'll bring light." That night, he staged a couch circle check-in with our friends. Caleb cracked a beer and said intervention like a joke. Our friend Maya squeezed my shoulder. Graham announced he'd canceled my card because we were tightening the belt, then glanced around the room like a CEO surveying his Series A. "She's been stressed," he said. "I'm worried about her spending." I went to the kitchen for water. He followed, whisper angry. "Play along." "You already chose the play," I whispered back. "At the Fairmont." He flinched. His hand closed around my wrist, then loosened when my eyes dropped to it. "You're going to regret this," he said. "You will leave with nothing." "I'll leave with my name," I said. He didn't know what to do with that. 2 mornings later, a Crown and Caliber partner on West 5th evaluated the Rolex. The manager wore white gloves and kindness. He checked the serial, the dial, the bracelet links. "We'll settle the lien directly and wire you the remainder," he said. The offer number made my shoulders relax in a way that felt like safety. I signed with a hand that didn't shake. Austin light spilled across the glass case. Somewhere behind me, a couple gasped at a diamond they'd forget to insure. I walked out with a receipt and a future. Back at my kitchen table, I booked a one-way flight to Seattle for 3 weeks out, enough time to get my last assignments in at UT, organize my files, and avoid sprinting through the last stretch of a life I wanted to end standing. My aunt in Ballard had once said, "If you ever need to start over, I have a guest room and a dog who thinks everyone is a parade." I texted her, "Taking you up on it." She replied with a string of mountain emojis and, "Yes, come." Gala day came bright and cruelly beautiful. Graham's rented tux hung off our closet door like a costume. He asked if I was coming, a challenge more than a question. "People will ask," he said. "Tell them the truth," I said. He laughed like I'd told the kind of joke men clap each other on the back for. He left with his bow tie crisp and his watch bowl empty, unaware that what he'd worn as identity had already become a wire with my name on it. I didn't go to the museum. I went to Lena's office. The board met at 6. At 6:42, they texted him to step into a side room. The MC at 7:03 said, "Due to unforeseen changes," and introduced a different award first. At 7:50, while guests spooned panna cotta under spotlights, my husband walked into our apartment with his bow tie hanging, face pale and tight. "They're suspending me pending removal," he said, throat thick with a word he could not imagine applying to himself. "You think you won?" "I think I told the truth," I said. "Where's the watch?" "Sold legally," I said. "Lien satisfied. Documentation's in my email." His mouth worked around a dozen words, landed on one. "Insane." I poured water. "Tomorrow you'll get an email from our lawyer. Tonight you can sleep on the couch." He stared like the kitchen had moved 2 inches to the left. "You can't survive without me, though," he said, the spell he kept for emergencies. I took a slow sip. "Watch me." He slept in fits. I slept deep. The morning after the gala, Austin looked like a movie set somebody forgot to strike. The sky too blue, the air conditioner humming like it owed me money. My suitcase sat by the door with a sticky note that read, "ID plus charger, plus meds, plus writing folder." I had a checklist taped to the inside of a cabinet: close joint credit card, redirect direct deposit, copy medical records, update emergency contact, pull lease clause about early termination after separation. I called my mom. We're not the cry on the phone type. We're the send each other recipes and pay each other's parking tickets type. I told her I was separating. She went quiet, then said, "Em, I love you. I've got 3 nights on my couch if you detour through Dallas." I told her I had a flight and a plan. She said she'd Venmo me for coffee anyway. At noon, Lena called. "The board voted to remove him," she said. "It will be communicated as a leadership transition. We're offering a consulting arrangement for the short term." "And Savannah?" I asked, because 20-year-olds should be allowed to make mistakes without being crushed by the machinery that taught them to admire the wrong thing. "She's resigned," Lena said softly. "We offered support. She's going home for a bit." I thanked her and hung up and stared at a glass of water until it wasn't just water anymore. I texted Nina. "Board removed him." She replied, "You did that. Now finish it clean." Finishing clean meant lawyers. The family law clinic at UT took my intake. A supervising attorney named Evans sat across from me at a laminate table and said, "We like documentation." I slid over an organized dream. Screenshots, receipts, policy PDFs, HR emails, bank statements, the Crown and Caliber invoice showing lien satisfaction, and the statute around Texas's one-party consent. I hadn't recorded, but I wanted the law in the pile like a talisman. Evan nodded. "You've done our job for us," he said. "We'll file for separation and request temporary orders, including a freeze on joint accounts and a directive regarding occupancy." Occupancy was the polite word for who got to stay when leaving was expensive. Our lease had a clause for early termination in cases of divorce or substantiated separation. The landlord needed paperwork and a fee. I could cover it now. I paid the fee and sent me the confirmation and a photo of the clause to my Good Light folder. That night, Graham came home after meetings. He went straight to the watch bowl, reflex, and stared at the empty cushion like it had insulted him. "You can't sell it," he said again, as if saying so made it retroactively illegal. "It was never your asset free and clear," I said. "It was a financed item in my name. I disposed of it properly." He blinked, and I could see the equation hit. He'd been playing founder. I'd been doing governance. He shifted tactics. "We're a story now," he said. "The Business Journal called me for comment." "They called me too," I said. "I said no comment. I have a life." "You blew up my life because your card got canceled." He laughed, not happy. "Do you hear how ridiculous that is?" "I blew up a lie because I stood at a register and realized you thought I was an expense line you could toggle," I said. "And because you violated your own code, don't mistake the inciting incident for the cause." He opened his mouth, closed it. "Optics," he finally said, weak. "Fairness," I said. A week clicked by like a metronome. Austin in late April means heat like a wet towel, and live oaks dropping pollen like confetti you didn't ask for. I finished a final paper at the Perry Castaneda Library, drank drip coffee at Cafe Medici, stared at the Jenga stack of the UT Law Building, and thought of all the people inside who loved rules as a way to make life livable. At night, while Graham was out for the gym, or with advisors, I packed in quiet loops. Jeans, the sweater that made me feel like a person worth saving, the photo from the Travis County courthouse that I still wanted to keep, because she, the version of me in that picture, was honest, even if he wasn't. I labeled a banker's box: lease, utilities, taxes, another college stuff, another kitchen. I sorted, shredded, saved. One afternoon, Nina and I sat on the floor with the blinds open to the drift of traffic and spread my evidence like a crime board for truth. She moved Post-its into columns: humiliation, betrayal, suspicion and discovery, villain's power, resolve, escalation and war, revenge, payoff, chilling resolution. "Your arc is clean," she said. "Now we close with choice." "Choice?" I asked. "You choose yourself," she said. "Not a dramatic burn down. A quiet transfer of power back to your own life." The gala had burned its way through the group chat by then. Eager DMs from people who wanted gossip bad enough to pretend concern. I didn't feed anyone. Graham posted a new chapter LinkedIn with a selfie in a Navy suit, 3 lines about transitioning to an advisor role to focus on product, and a paragraph about spending more time on family. I sat on my couch and counted the ways spin is different from truth. I didn't comment. I made a grocery list for Aunt Jen in Seattle: oat milk, Greek yogurt, apples, pantry beans, sent her the arrival time, and asked if her dog, Moose, still loved squeaky toys. She replied with a photo of Moose holding a stuffed dinosaur in his mouth and a caption that read, "He's ready." My last class at UT was in a lecture hall that smelled like pencil shavings and high expectations. I handed in a paper I cared about and walked across the West Mall while a group of freshmen tossed a frisbee like tomorrow was a guarantee. I paused at the Littlefield fountain, listened to the water, let 23 feel like a number you could rebuild on. That night, a text from an unknown number buzzed my phone. "Fire alarm in your building around midnight?" It was Savannah. The photo attached was of her hand holding an iced latte, the reflection catching a streak of a watch I knew too well. She added, "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. I blocked the number, and then, because I'm not cruel, I unblocked it and texted back 2 words, "Be careful. Power learns slowly." On my final week in the apartment, the refrigerator hummed like it had opinions. Graham was increasingly gone. I didn't ask where. The lease release came through. The landlord's email started, "Per your early termination clause," like a blessing in bureaucratic. Evan sent over temporary orders signed by a judge: freeze on the joint account, occupancy directive, mutual non-disparagement, and a note on constructive eviction. We both agreed not to lock each other out until the move date. I forwarded the orders to my mom, Aunt Jen, and myself. I pinned them to the top of my email. I printed 3 and put them in the shoebox under my bed with the rest of good light. The night before my flight, the sky over Austin cracked into heat, lightning like the bouquet name. I lay on the rug with my cheek pressed to the cool weave and watched flashes paint the ceiling. The apartment smelled like cardboard and the faint bergamot that wouldn't leave. I thought about the watch's empty cushion and how much of my life had been about cushions, making him comfortable, softening the landings, cushioning the truth. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and stop doing that. Morning came with the already sticky light of May. I zipped my suitcase. I put my house key and mailbox key on the counter, took a photo for my records, and texted Graham, leaving at 10. Keys by the bowl, utilities prorated per the spreadsheet I sent. He replied with a thumbs up, and then, weirdly, a broken heart. I shrugged, shouldered my tote, and closed the door behind me with a click that felt like a notarization. Bergstrom Airport was a parade of beginnings. A dad in a Longhorns cap herded 2 kids towards security, a group in matching shirts read Nash's Last Rodeo, and a woman in scrubs slept upright like a miracle. I moved through TSA with that double check of the pocket you do, even when you know your ID is exactly where it should be. At the gate, I sat by the window, watched a plane bow its nose toward the runway, and opened my good light folder one last time like you touch a scar to confirm it's healed, canceled card alert, heat lightning receipt, Fairmont valet ticket, Miraval folio, policy clause highlighted, Lena's first reply, the board's schedule, Crown and Caliber invoice, Alaska confirmation, lease clause, temporary orders, Aunt Jen's "Yes, come." "Boarding Group C," the agent called. A little kid and his mom waved at the plane. I texted Nina, "Wheels up soon," and she sent 10 blue hearts and "Send me a picture of the first mountain you see." I promised. As I stood to board, my phone buzzed once more. Unknown number. I let it go, then glanced. The display preview read, "We need a comment for the Trainhawk story." I smiled at the window, at my own reflection layered over a runway. "No comment," I whispered to no one, then stepped onto the jet bridge. On the plane, I had the window seat. A woman with a baby took the aisle and apologized in advance like people do. I told her my best trick for popping ears. The engines thrummed as if they had thoughts. Austin shrank. The river ribboned. The stadium glowed. I put my forehead against the cool plastic and imagined the mountains ahead, spindrift, pine, rain that smells like clean things. We hit cloud. We broke into light. Seattle greeted me with air that tasted like metal and possibility. Aunt Jen's Subaru smelled like dog and cedar. Moose, 80 pounds of enthusiasm in fur, pressed his whole heart against my shins. "Welcome home for now," Jen said, squeezing me hard. "You look taller." Her Ballard bungalow had a small guest room with a quilt that didn't match anything and a shelf of paperbacks that had clearly been loved in bathtubs. We ate salmon she claimed was good enough and made tea and didn't press on the bruise. In the morning, I walked to the market for apples and watched gulls complain about fishermen's hours and felt both very young and very old. Starting over is administrative. I made a Google sheet titled Seattle. Rose, new bank account, done. UT forwarding address, done. Resume update, in progress. Email professors, done. Apply for part-time jobs near Ballard, in progress. Therapist search, emailed 3. Temporary Washington phone plan, done. File change of address, done. Find the good bakery, in progress. Contenders, Sea Wolf, Larson's. At night, Jen and I watched rain slip down the window. She said, "He'll reach out when the dust settles." I said, "He already is." I showed her a long text from Graham about shared history, and we were good, right? And his favorite refrain, "No one will believe you." She took my phone like it had a temperature. "Block when you're ready," she said, "or archive, or answer with an invoice for your time." I wrote him back once, not for him, but for the record. "I wish you healing and accountability. Please direct future communication to counsel." He sent back 9 gray bubbles and then nothing, which felt like a room suddenly lacking a drip. Days ordered themselves. I got a part-time barista job at a coffee shop that roasted beans in the back and played Fleet Foxes even when no customers were there. The regulars learned my name and asked normal questions like, "How's your day?" which can be more healing than the heavy, "We need to talk." I filed paperwork with UT to complete my last credits remotely. My advisor said, "We'll get you there," like a pilot over a storm. On Thursdays, I took Moose to Golden Gardens and let him dig at the edge of the sound in bursts of untranslatable joy. At night, the Good Light folder felt less like armor and more like an archive in case someone ever tried to rewrite me. I added 3 new documents: the final removal notice from the Trainhawk board, the quiet press release I didn't share, the eviction of a lie from the apartment of my body. I also added a picture Nina sent. Graham's LinkedIn changed to Founder in Transition Consulting. 50 comments said, "Proud of you for prioritizing family," and "Onward." Spin has gravity. Truth does not always win the comments section. It does, however, make your chest less loud at night. 2 weeks in, Lena called, not HR business, human business. "I'm leaving Trainhawk," she said. "I did what I could. Sometimes the right thing is making sure the people who are safe stay safe, and the ones who need to heal have to do it somewhere else." She laughed softly. "I applied to a role at a nonprofit that fights wage theft. The benefits are terrible. I've never been so excited." "Thank you," I said, "for not pretending." My mom drove up for a weekend. We made a grocery list and fought about butter brands the way people who love each other earn the right to. She walked with me under a gray sky that calmed me like a cool hand, and when she left, she put a note in the pocket of my hoodie. "Proud of you for making a plan. Call me when you see your first ferry at sunset." I saw it the next day. I sent her a photo. She replied with 20 exclamation points and, "You look like you." I sat on a bench and cried without being brave about it for once. Then, because life is not a movie and paper still needs filing, I had my first Zoom hearing for the temporary orders becoming less temporary. Evan appeared in a little square and a tie that looked like it might be a joke he told only to himself. Graham appeared in a square that tried to be neutral. His lawyer, a man named Collins, with a jaw that screamed golf, said words like amicable and misunderstanding. The judge, a woman with hair that had seen a lot of stories, read from the paperwork and asked if there were any disputes. Evan talked in facts. I sat very still in Aunt Jen's back room and counted ceiling tiles like a prayer. The judge signed what needed signing. "We are adjourned," she said, and I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath underwater for a sport I'd never chosen. After the hearing, my phone pinged. A Venmo request from Graham for $30. Half utilities. I forgot to include coffee pods. My laugh startled Moose so badly he barked at the ceiling. I declined and replied in the memo field. "See spreadsheet." He sent a question mark. I muted the thread. That evening, Nina called. "How's the air?" she asked. "Like someone opened a window in my brain," I said. "I have a surprise," she said, then pinged a shared folder. Photos she'd taken from the gala, not of him, of the museum's plaques, the hands of the donors, the words on the wall that said, "Art changes the way we see." Underneath, she'd written, "So did you." I printed the sentence and taped it to the edge of my mirror. 3 Fridays later, my one-way flight's confirmation email slid down my inbox under utility confirmations and a job posting for a legal assistant at a nonprofit. I kept it. Proof that sometimes a purchase is a promise kept to yourself. Spring in Seattle leaned towards summer with a stubborn tilt. The coffee shop's back door stayed propped open with a cinder block. I learned regulars' orders and who fed quarters to the parking meter like a slot machine. I joined a small running group that met under a sign that said, "Don't die." They taught me a route along the Burke-Gilman where you pass blackberry brambles and cyclists who believe in rules. My lungs remembered how to work for me. One night after closing, I added one last doc to Good Light, a letter to the me who stood at HEB under fluorescent lights while a stranger watched humiliation blaze my cheeks. I wrote, "You are not expensive. You are not a line item. You are a person. Go home, eat eggs for dinner, call Nina, and start a folder. It will save you. You will save you." It might be neat to say Graham apologized. He didn't. He sent exactly one real line, months later. "I hope you're okay." I didn't reply. Healing doesn't always make room for epilogues written by the person who caused the plot. Instead, I took a photo of Moose asleep upside down, sent it to Aunt Jen from the couch one room over, and typed, "What do we do when we wake up?" She replied, "Coffee in the farmer's market, and then we keep going." On a Saturday, Nina texted, "I'm coming to visit. We'll find your coffee shop's rival and betray them once, just for fun." I sent her the ferry schedule. She booked a flight. I cleaned the guest room like I was about to show the best parts of my map to someone who helped me redraw it. The day Nina landed, the sky cracked open and did that high-definition blue Seattle saves for the deserving. We walked along the locks, watched salmon fling themselves up ladders built because the river had been interrupted, and laughed at the metaphor like maybe the universe was tired of being subtle. We made dinner and burned the garlic and ate it anyway, because sitting at the table is sometimes the win. Before she left, Nina said, "Do you realize your revenge was never about him?" I blinked. It was about insisting the systems he worshipped, policies, boards, optics, work on him too. You didn't torch him. You turned on the lights. We stood in Aunt Jen's doorway, the smell of rain pretending it hadn't just been sunny. Nina hugged me like a verb. "You're good," she said. "Keep being good at paperwork." After she left, I went for a run in drizzle, a kind of weather that feels like permission not to perform joy, but to carry it quietly. I ended at a bluff where you can see cranes and water and the stubborn little dramas of boats. I stood there long enough that my hair went from wavy to tragic, and I didn't care. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, UT final grade posted. I opened the portal and saw it. A. I cried again, because proof is an underrated love language. I walked home. Moose met me with a squeaky dinosaur. Aunt Jen said, "Well?" And I held up my phone, and we did a very dumb, very necessary kitchen dance. Later, I hung my UT graduation photo in the hallway. Not to say I'm done, to say that was hard, and I did it anyway. Months later, I found myself in an office with cheap carpet and people who eat lunch at their desks because urgency doesn't check the clock. My legal assistant job at a wage theft nonprofit. I interviewed a woman whose boss stole tips, a man misclassified as a contractor, a teenager paid with exposure. I wrote intake notes in clean sentences with timestamps and promised what I could: process, attention, a shot at fairness. On the wall above my monitor, in a simple frame, the printed line, "So did you." Every once in a while, someone would come into the shop where I still worked Saturday mornings and ask me what time it was. I'd glance at the cheap digital watch I bought at Target, because it tells time the same way a submariner does, and answer. Sometimes my throat tightened for a second, then loosened, an old reflex dissolving like a sugar cube in hot coffee. If you're waiting for a scene where I see Graham across the street and don't recognize him, that didn't happen. Austin is far. Algorithms tried to serve me his new content anyway: how to pivot, lessons in leadership, and I trained my thumb to scroll past like we all do with ads that used to be our lives. Once, late, I clicked. He looked older. He used words like values. He had a dog. I closed the tab. I walked Moose. One night, almost a year from the beep at HEB, I sat on Aunt Jen's back steps with a bowl of cherries and thought about the first sentence of this story. This is a true story from my life. There are so many ways to tell it. I could make it about a watch, or a flight, or a policy, or a girl, or a man who believed rules were for other people. I could make it about retail humiliation, or HR, or cardinal directions, but when I strip it all down, it is a story about choosing myself in a way that didn't require collateral damage, only documentation. About believing that fairness is a door you can knock on hard enough that someone has to open it. About refusing to be cruel when cruelty would have been easy and satisfying for about 42 minutes, and then very empty after. The last thing I added to Good Light was not a document. It was a photo. Me on a ferry deck in a raincoat, hair yanked into a messy bun, no makeup, mouth open in a laugh I didn't plan, a line of mountains beyond my shoulder like a promise that never needed me to perform to be real. I looked at it and thought, this is what a life looks like when the person holding it trusts herself to be the adult in the room. Sometimes on purpose, I go into a grocery store at a time when it's busy, the line long, the fluorescent lights unkind, and buy something small, a lemon, a bunch of parsley, a bouquet of whatever looks like it needs rescuing. My card goes through with an ordinary beep. No audience, no primary account holder alert. Just my name on a small rectangle of plastic and the easy fact that comes with it, I decide. At home, I put the receipt in a drawer and make dinner. I text Nina memes about law school. I send my mom a picture of Moose in a rain jacket he hates with his whole being. I email Aunt Jen a link to a fundraiser for a wage theft client who needs first month rent, and she replies with a screenshot of her donation and 15 hearts. I open my laptop and write another sober, boring, beautiful intake memo that will eventually be part of someone else's Good Light. Then I wash dishes and stand at the sink and watch the last smear of daylight go silver and then dark across the window over Ballard. When the quiet gets loud, because it does, even in happy endings, because life keeps being life, I put on my cheap digital watch and step outside and walk until my thoughts line up. I pass a neighbor's garden and a kid on a scooter and a couple arguing softly about nothing, and I think about how often the best revenge is not an explosion, but the construction of a life so aligned with your own ethics that the person who tried to make you small would have to unfold themselves into a whole new shape to fit in it. Some nights, it still feels like I'm standing at a register, cheeks hot, a stranger watching. On those nights, I make tea and open Good Light and scroll for a minute, not to rile myself up, but to remember how far a steady hand can carry you. Then I close the folder, turn off the kitchen light, and leave the room with my own time on my own wrist, and a house that smells like clean dishes and rain. In the dark hallway, the frame over my monitor catches a little spill of streetlight. The sentence glows just enough to read it without reaching for a switch. Art changes the way we see. So did you. So do you. I go to bed and sleep like a person who believes tomorrow is something she gets to build. The end.